You wrote that you were plain. Jesse Blackwell's voice cut through the Wyoming wind like a blade, his weathered hand gripping the letter so tight the paper crumpled. Isabel Turner stood frozen on the dusty platform, her carpetbag trembling in her grip, watching this stranger, her husband-to-be, read her most vulnerable confession aloud. You said you had nothing to offer but honesty and hard work. His boots scraped gravel as he stepped closer, gray eyes burning into hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. Woman, do you have any idea what kind of man answers a letter like that? Her breath caught. This wasn't rejection. This was something far more dangerous. Before we continue with Isabel and Jesse's story, please subscribe to our channel and stay with me until the very end of this journey. I want to see how far this story travels. Comment below with your city so I can know where you're watching from. Isabel's fingers had gone numb around the handles of her carpetbag, but she couldn't tell if it was from the cold mountain air or the way Jesse Blackwell was looking at her. Not with pity, not with disappointment, with something that felt like recognition. "I'm Jesse," he said, and his voice was quieter now, almost gentle. "And I'm the kind of man who knows exactly what honesty is worth." "I didn't mean to," Isabel started, but her throat closed up. Back in New Jersey, she'd practiced 100 different things to say when she met him. None of them came out now. "Didn't mean to what? Tell the truth?" Jesse folded her letter carefully, tucking it inside his coat pocket like it was something valuable. "That makes you smarter than half the people in this town." The stagecoach driver dropped her trunk onto the platform with a thud that made Isabel jump. Jesse caught her elbow, steadying her, not grabbing, and the brief touch sent heat racing up her arm, despite the November chill. "That everything you brought?" Jesse asked, eyeing her single trunk. "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper. "Good. Means you travel light. Means you can move fast if you need to." His eyes scanned the street behind her, and something hard flickered across his face. "We should go, before the town gets too interested in your arrival." "Are you ashamed of me already?" The question burst out before Isabel could stop it, and she immediately wanted to take it back. What right did she have to demand anything from this man? But Jesse's head snapped toward her, and his expression was fierce. "Ashamed? Of you? Woman, I'm trying to keep you safe." "Safe from what?" "From people who ask too many questions." He hoisted her trunk onto his shoulder like it weighed nothing. "From men who think a woman arriving alone is an invitation. From this whole damn town that's been in my business since the day I was born." He started walking toward a wagon hitched to 2 sturdy horses. "You comin', or you planning to stand there freezing until someone offers you a better deal?" Isabel's legs moved before her brain caught up. She hurried after him, her skirts kicking up dust, her heart hammering against her ribs. This wasn't how she'd imagined this moment. She'd expected awkwardness, maybe, polite distance, some kind of negotiation about the terms of their arrangement. She hadn't expected to feel like she was running towards something instead of running away. Jesse loaded her trunk into the wagon bed, then turned and offered his hand to help her up. When she placed her palm in his fingers closed around hers, rough with calluses, warm despite the cold, and she felt something shift in her chest. Something that felt dangerous and terrifying and a little bit like hope. "My ranch is an hour outside town," Jesse said once they were both seated and the horses started moving. "It's not fancy. It's not even particularly comfortable, but it's mine, and it's solid, and nobody's taking it from me." "Is someone trying to?" His jaw tightened. "Always someone trying to take something from someone else out here. That's how the West works." "That's how everywhere works," Isabel said quietly. Jesse glanced at her, something like surprise crossing his face. "You're not wrong about that." They rode in silence for a few minutes, the town falling away behind them, the landscape opening up into rolling hills dotted with scrub brush and the occasional stand of pine. The sky was enormous out here, bigger than anything Isabel had ever seen in New Jersey, and it made her feel small and significant all at once. "Why did you answer my letter?" she finally asked. "You could have had anyone. You could have—" "Could have what? Married some pretty young thing who'd cry herself to sleep every night, missing her fancy life back east? Married someone who lied about what she wanted just to trap a man?" Jesse shook his head. "I've buried one wife already. I'm not interested in burying another one who couldn't handle the truth of this life." The words hit Isabel like a physical blow. "You were married before?" 7 years. Consumption took her." His voice was flat, but Isabel heard the pain underneath it. "She was good, and she was kind, and she didn't deserve what this place did to her." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Just be honest. That's all I'm asking." He pulled the reins slightly, guiding the horses around a deep rut in the road. "You wrote that you're not pretty. You wrote that you've got no family left and no prospects. You wrote that you'd work hard and expect nothing but a roof over your head and food in your belly." "That's all true." "Then you're exactly what I need." Jesse's voice was steady, matter of fact. "Because pretty fades and prospects change. But a woman who'll stand beside a man when things get hard, that's worth more than gold." Isabel's eyes burned, and she blinked rapidly, refusing to cry. "You don't know if I'm that woman." "No," Jesse agreed. "I don't. But you don't know if I'm the kind of man worth standing beside either. So I guess we'll both find out." The wagon hit another rut, jostling them together, and their shoulders bumped. Neither of them moved away. "What do you expect from me?" Isabel asked. "In terms of—" She felt heat climb up her neck. "In terms of the marriage." Jesse was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was careful. "I expect you to run my house. Cook, clean, mend clothes, basic things. I expect you to hold your own when neighbors come by. And I expect you not to gossip about my business in town." He paused. "As for the other part of marriage, I won't touch you unless you want me to. This is a partnership, not a prison." Something in Isabel's chest loosened. "Thank you." "Don't thank me for being decent. That's a low bar. You'd be surprised how many men can't clear it." Jesse's hands tightened on the reins. "Someone hurt you back east?" "No, not like you mean." Isabel stared at her hands folded in her lap. "But I watched my mother fade away in a marriage where she didn't matter, where she was just the woman who kept the house running, while her husband spent their money on cards and drink. When he died, he left us with nothing but debts. My mother died a year later, and I think it was from relief as much as illness." "Jesus," Jesse breathed out slowly. "I'm not that kind of man." "I know. You wouldn't have answered my letter if you were." "How do you know that?" Isabel met his eyes. "Because a man like that wouldn't have noticed the honesty. He'd have only seen the desperation." The corner of Jesse's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "You're observant." "I've had to be." They crested a hill, and suddenly the ranch came into view. It wasn't large. A simple 2-story house with a wraparound porch, a barn, a few outbuildings, and corrals stretching out behind. But it was neat, well-maintained, and solid. Exactly like Jesse had described it. "Home," Jesse said simply. Isabel's throat tightened. Home. She hadn't had one of those in longer than she could remember. As they pulled up to the house, a man emerged from the barn. Tall, Native American, maybe in his 50s, with long black hair streaked with gray and eyes that missed nothing. "That's Thomas," Jesse said. "He runs the horse operation with me. Known him since I was 16. He's the closest thing I've got to family." Thomas approached the wagon, his gaze moving from Jesse to Isabel with quiet assessment. "This her?" "This is Isabel Turner," Jesse said, climbing down and then offering his hand to help her down. "Isabel, this is Thomas Whitehorse. Don't let him fool you. He's mean as a snake when he wants to be." "Only to people who deserve it," Thomas said, and his weathered face creased into something that might have been a smile. "Welcome, Isabel Turner. Jesse's been pacing the barn like a caged cat for 3 days waiting for that stagecoach." "Thomas," Jesse growled in warning. "What? It's true." Thomas picked up Isabel's trunk like it weighed nothing. "I'll take this inside for you. Jesse, the fence in the north pasture is down again. We've got 3 horses loose." Jesse swore under his breath. "I'll handle it. Isabel, go inside and—" He stopped, looking uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. "Make yourself comfortable, I guess. There's food in the kitchen. Fire's already going in the stove." "I can help with the fence," Isabel said. Both men stared at her. "You just got off a 2-day stagecoach ride," Jesse said slowly. "And I'm not an invalid. If you need help, I can help." Thomas laughed, a short, sharp bark of amusement. "I like her already." Jesse rubbed his jaw, and Isabel saw the calculation in his eyes. Testing her, maybe, or deciding if she meant what she said. "Fine," he said finally, "but you'll need different clothes. Can't fix a fence in a traveling dress." "Do you have something I can borrow?" "Check the trunk in my bedroom, top drawer. There's old work shirts and trousers that might fit." Isabel nodded and headed inside, her heart pounding with a mixture of nervousness and something that felt almost like excitement. The house was warmer than she expected, and cleaner too. The main room held a sturdy table, several chairs, a large stone fireplace, and windows that let in the afternoon light. Everything was practical, well used, but cared for. She found the bedroom easily. Jesse's bedroom, which would presumably become their bedroom, though the thought made her face burn. The trunk was where he said it would be, and she pulled out a flannel shirt and canvas trousers that would be too large but could be rolled up. She changed quickly, braiding her hair tightly, and when she looked in the small mirror above the dresser, she barely recognized herself. She looked like someone who belonged here. When she returned outside, Jesse and Thomas were already at the corral, and Jesse's eyebrows rose when he saw her. "Well, I'll be damned." "Language," Thomas muttered. "Do I look ridiculous?" Isabel asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You look like you mean business," Jesse said, and there was approval in his voice that made Isabel stand a little straighter. "Come on, let's get those horses back before they decide they like freedom too much." The next hour was hard physical work, chasing down horses that had no interest in being caught, hammering fence posts back into frozen ground, stretching wire that fought them every inch of the way. Isabel's hands ached, her back hurt, and she was pretty sure she'd have bruises tomorrow. But Jesse worked beside her without complaint, and Thomas offered advice with dry humor that made her laugh despite her exhaustion. By the time they got the last horse back into the pasture and secured the fence, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that took Isabel's breath away. "You did good," Jesse said quietly, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold. "Better than I expected." "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Maybe for you to give up halfway through, head back to the house?" He coiled the extra wire with practiced efficiency. "Most people from back east can't handle this kind of work." "I'm not most people." "No," Jesse agreed, his gray eyes catching the last of the sunlight. "I'm starting to figure that out." They walked back to the house together, and Thomas peeled off toward his own cabin with a knowing look that made Isabel's face heat. Inside, she was suddenly aware that they were alone, that night was falling, that this was her wedding day, even though there had been no ceremony yet. "You hungry?" Jesse asked, breaking the awkward silence. "Starving." "Good, because I can cook about 3 things, and 2 of them are different types of beans." He moved toward the kitchen with an ease that suggested he was more comfortable doing something with his hands than standing still. "We'll go into town tomorrow. Get married proper at the courthouse. Judge Thornton can do it." "That simple?" "That simple." Jesse pulled out a cast-iron skillet and set it on the stove. "Unless you want something fancier." "No, simple is good." Isabel watched him work, measuring coffee grounds with the same steady competence he'd shown fixing the fence. "Jesse, can I ask you something?" "Long as you're prepared for an honest answer." "Why did you really answer my letter? And don't tell me it's just because I was honest. There had to be other honest women." Jesse was quiet for a long moment, his hands stilling over the coffee pot. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and rough. "Because you said you were plain. Because you said you had nothing to offer. Because most people spend their whole lives lying about who they are, pretending they're more than they are. And you did the exact opposite." He turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "And because when I read that letter, I thought, here's someone who understands what it means to be overlooked. Someone who knows what it's like to be judged for what you're not instead of what you are." "And what are you?" Isabel whispered. "I'm the son of a drunk who died in a bar fight. I'm the man who couldn't save his first wife from a disease that rotted her lungs. I'm the rancher that half this town wants to drive out because I won't sell my land to their railroad schemes." His jaw tightened. "I'm not a hero, Isabel. I'm just a man trying to hold on to what's mine, and maybe, build something that matters." "That's enough," Isabel said, and she meant it. "That's more than enough." They stared at each other across the small kitchen, and something passed between them, an understanding maybe, or the beginning of one. This wasn't romance. This wasn't a fairy tale. But it was real, and it was honest. And right now, that felt like more than Isabel had ever dared to hope for. "Sit down," Jesse said gruffly, turning back to the stove. "Food'll be ready soon." Isabel sat at the rough wooden table, watching this stranger who was about to become her husband. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. And that, she was starting to realize, might be the most dangerous feeling of all. That feeling didn't fade during dinner, even when Jesse's cooking turned out to be exactly what he'd promised. Beans, salt pork, and coffee strong enough to strip paint. Isabel ate every bite, and Jesse watched her with something that looked like relief. "You're not going to pretend it's good, are you?" he asked. "It's fuel," Isabel said. "That's what matters." "My first wife used to say the same thing. Then she'd make something that actually tasted like food, and I'd realize what I'd been missing." His expression shifted, became guarded. "I'm not much of a cook." "Then it's good I am." Isabel pushed her plate away. "My mother taught me to stretch a chicken into 4 meals and make bread that didn't break teeth. I can work with what you've got here." Jesse's eyebrows rose. "You saying my bread breaks teeth?" "I'm saying I found the loaf in your cupboard, and I'm pretty sure it could stop a bullet." For a moment, Jesse just stared at her. Then he laughed, a real laugh, rough and startled, like he'd surprised himself. "Fair enough." Isabel felt something warm bloom in her chest. She'd made him laugh. This hard, guarded man had laughed at something she'd said. "I should show you where things are," Jesse said, standing abruptly, as if the laughter had made him uncomfortable. "Where you'll sleep tonight." Isabel's stomach dropped. "Tonight?" "We're not married yet, not legal." Jesse moved toward the stairs. "You'll take the bedroom. I'll sleep down here." "That's your room. I can't—" "It's your room now. Or it will be, tomorrow." He was already climbing the stairs, not looking back. "Come on, bring your bag." Isabel followed, her heart hammering. The stairs creaked under their weight, and the upstairs hallway was narrow, lit only by the lamp Jesse carried. He pushed open a door at the end of the hall. "This is it. Bed's decent. Quilt's warm. There's water in the pitcher if you need to wash up." He set the lamp on the dresser, and the light cast shadows across his face. "Door has a lock. Use it if you want." "Jesse." Isabel stepped into the room, suddenly exhausted and overwhelmed and terrified all at once. "What if I'm not what you need? What if I can't—" "Stop." Jesse's voice was firm. "You spent all day proving what you can do. Don't undo it now by doubting yourself." "I'm scared." "Good. Anyone who's not scared of big changes is a fool." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Isabel?" "Yes?" "Tomorrow, when we stand in front of that judge, you can still say no. You can get back on that stagecoach and head anywhere you want. I'll give you money for the fare." His gray eyes held hers. "But if you say yes, I need you to mean it. I need you to be all in. Because I don't do things halfway, and I won't start with this." Isabel's throat tightened. "I'll mean it." Jesse nodded once, then pulled the door closed behind him. Isabel stood alone in the room that would be hers, listening to his boots on the stairs, the sound of him moving around downstairs, banking the fire, settling in for the night. She changed into her nightgown with shaking hands, climbed into the bed, and pulled the quilt up to her chin. She didn't use the lock. Morning came too fast and too slow all at once. Isabel woke to the smell of coffee and found her traveling dress laid out on the chair. Someone had brushed off the dust and pressed out the worst of the wrinkles. Jesse, she realized. Jesse had done that while she slept. When she came downstairs, he was standing by the window, dressed in clean clothes, his hair still damp from washing. He looked almost nervous. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." The ride into town was quieter than yesterday, but the silence felt different, charged with anticipation and inevitability. Other wagons and riders passed them on the road, and Isabel felt their curious stares. By noon, everyone in town would know Jesse Blackwell was getting married. The courthouse was a simple brick building in the center of town, and Judge Thornton was a white-haired man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. "Jesse," he said, shaking Jesse's hand. "Heard you had a lady coming in. This her?" "Isabel Turner," Jesse said, "from New Jersey." The judge studied Isabel for a long moment. "You know what you're getting into, Miss Turner?" "No," Isabel said honestly, "but I know what I'm getting out of." Judge Thornton's mouth twitched. "Fair enough. Let's make this official." The ceremony lasted less than 5 minutes. No flowers, no music, no guests except for the judge's clerk who served as witness. Just words, simple, binding words, and Jesse's hand gripping hers when the judge asked if she took him as her husband. "I do," Isabel said, and her voice was steady. "I do," Jesse echoed, and his voice was not. "By the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Jesse, you can kiss your bride if you're so inclined." Jesse looked at Isabel, a question in his eyes. She nodded, barely breathing. He leaned down, careful, controlled, and pressed his lips to hers. It was brief, almost chaste, but Isabel felt it down to her toes. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark. "Mrs. Blackwell," he said quietly. "Mr. Blackwell," she managed. They signed the papers, shook the judge's hand, and walked out of the courthouse into the bright November morning as husband and wife. Isabel waited for it to feel different, to feel more real. But mostly, she just felt terrified and determined in equal measure. "We need supplies," Jesse said as they climbed back into the wagon. "Long as we're in town." The general store was crowded, and Isabel felt the weight of every stare as they walked in together. Whispers followed them through the aisles. She kept her head high and her hands steady as she selected flour, sugar, coffee, fabric for new curtains. "Well, well," a woman's voice cut through the quiet murmur. "Jesse Blackwell got himself a mail-order bride." Isabel turned to find a blonde woman in an expensive dress, beautiful and polished, and looking at Isabel like she was something unpleasant on the bottom of her shoe. "Catherine," Jesse said, his voice flat. "This is my wife, Isabel." "Your wife?" Catherine's laugh was sharp. "How practical of you. Though I suppose when you can't attract a woman on your own merits, you have to import one." "That's enough," Jesse said, but Catherine wasn't done. "Does she know about the railroad, Jesse? Does she know what's coming?" "I said that's enough." Jesse's hand found Isabel's elbow. "We're leaving." "You can't run from this forever," Catherine called after them. "My father owns half this county, and he's going to own your pathetic ranch too. It's just a matter of time." Outside, Jesse was breathing hard, his jaw clenched so tight Isabel thought he might crack his teeth. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." "Who is she?" "Catherine Morrison. Her father owns Morrison Land Company. He's been trying to buy my ranch for 2 years." Jesse loaded their supplies into the wagon with more force than necessary. "The railroad wants a straight line through my property. I won't sell." "So they're trying to force you out?" "They're trying." Jesse climbed into the wagon. "They won't succeed." "What will they do?" Jesse was quiet for a long moment. "Whatever they think they can get away with." The ride back to the ranch was tense, and Isabel's mind was spinning. She'd known Jesse had enemies, but she hadn't understood the scope of it. Morrison Land Company, the railroad, a beautiful woman who clearly had history with Jesse. "Did you love her?" The question came out before Isabel could stop it. Jesse's hands tightened on the reins. "No." "But she wanted you to. Catherine Morrison wants whatever she can't have. That's all I ever was to her. Something to win." He glanced at Isabel. "When I wouldn't play her games, she got nasty about it. And when her father decided he wanted my land, she got worse. She's going to make this hard on us." "She's going to try." Jesse's voice was grim. "Which is why you need to understand something, Isabel. This marriage, it's put a target on your back, too. The Morrisons won't just come after me anymore. They'll come after anyone I care about." The words hung in the air between them. Anyone I care about. "So what do we do?" Isabel asked. "We stand our ground. We don't give them anything to use against us. And we trust no one except each other and Thomas." Jesse pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house. "Can you do that?" "Yes." Isabel climbed down without waiting for help. "Jesse, I need you to understand something too. I didn't come out here to be your weakness. I came here to be your partner. So whatever's coming, we face it together." Jesse looked at her for a long moment, and something in his expression cracked open. Just a fraction. "Together," he repeated, like he was testing the word. The first week of their marriage fell into a rhythm that was both strange and surprisingly natural. Isabel took over the kitchen and turned it into something that actually worked. She cleaned, organized, cooked meals that made Jesse eat seconds. She mended his torn shirts, darned his socks, and took inventory of everything they had and everything they needed. But she also worked beside him, feeding horses, mucking stalls, hauling water, chopping wood. Her hands blistered and then calloused. Her back ached. She fell into bed each night exhausted, and Jesse still slept downstairs, and neither of them talked about it. Thomas watched them both with knowing eyes. "You're working her too hard," he told Jesse one morning while Isabel was inside making breakfast. "She insists on helping, because she thinks she has to prove herself." Thomas's voice was dry. "Wonder where she got that idea." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've been working yourself half to death since the day she arrived, trying to prove you don't need anyone." Thomas poured coffee with steady hands. You're both so busy proving you don't need each other that you're missing what's right in front of you. And what's that? That you're better together than apart. And that scares the hell out of both of you. Jesse didn't answer, but Thomas's words stuck with him. 8 days after the wedding, Isabel was in the kitchen when she heard horses approaching. Too many horses, moving too fast. She looked out the window and saw 5 men riding up to the house, and every instinct she had screamed danger. Jesse emerged from the barn, Thomas at his side, both of them moving with the kind of careful tension that came from expecting trouble. The man leading the group was older, well-dressed, with cold eyes and an easy smile that didn't reach them. Jesse Blackwell, been a while. Morrison, Jesse's voice was flat. You're trespassing. Just being neighborly. Heard you got yourself married. Wanted to meet the new Mrs. Blackwell. Morrison's gaze shifted to the house, and Isabel felt it like a physical touch. Where is she? Inside, where she's staying. Now that's not very hospitable. Morrison dismounted, and his men followed suit. I've got a business proposition for you, Jesse. One I think you'll want to hear. Not interested. You haven't heard it yet. Morrison pulled out a rolled document from his saddlebag. The railroads approved the northern route, straight through your property. Now, you can sell to me at a fair price, a very generous price, or you can wait for the government to take it through eminent domain for a fraction of what I'm offering. This is private land. They can't just take it. They can, and they will. Unless you've got a lawyer better than mine, and we both know you don't. Morrison's smile was all teeth. I'm offering you $50,000, Jesse. That's enough to buy a nice place somewhere else, somewhere easier, somewhere your new wife might actually want to live. Isabel's hands curled into fists. She pushed open the front door and stepped onto the porch. My husband and I are not interested in your money, Mr. Morrison. Every man turned to stare at her. Morrison's eyes raked over her, dismissive and calculating. Mrs. Blackwell, how lovely to finally meet you. Catherine told me you were quite plain. Catherine was being generous, Isabel said evenly. And you're still trespassing. Feisty. I like that. Morrison turned back to Jesse. Your wife doesn't understand business, Jesse. This isn't about what you want. This is about what's going to happen whether you cooperate or not. Then I guess we'll see what happens. Jesse's hand rested on the rifle he'd grabbed from the barn. You've made your offer. I've refused. Now get off my land. Morrison's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Wouldn't be my first. No, but it might be your last. Morrison remounted his horse. I'll give you 1 week to reconsider. After that, things get complicated. They rode out, and Isabel watched until they disappeared over the hill. Only then did she realize she was shaking. You shouldn't have come outside, Jesse said, his voice rough. They needed to see I exist, that I'm not afraid of them. But you are afraid. Terrified. Isabel wrapped her arms around herself. But being afraid doesn't mean I'm going to hide. Jesse looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Where the hell did you come from, Isabel Turner? Isabel Blackwell, she corrected. And I came from the same place you did. The place where you learn to stand up or get knocked down. That night, Jesse didn't sleep downstairs. He climbed the stairs after banking the fire, and Isabel heard his boots on the wooden floor, heard him pause outside the bedroom door. Her heart hammered as the door opened. I'm not going to touch you, Jesse said quietly. But I'm not leaving you alone up here when Morrison's making threats. The bed's big enough for both of us. Isabel nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched him remove his boots, his gun belt, his outer shirt. He climbed into bed fully clothed, staying so far on his side that he was nearly falling off the edge. They lay there in the darkness, neither of them sleeping, both of them achingly aware of the other. "Jesse?" Isabel whispered finally. "Yeah?" "Thank you for standing up to them today." "That's not something you need to thank me for. That's just what you do when someone threatens your family." "Your family?" The words made Isabel's chest ache. "Are we going to lose the ranch?" she asked. "Not if I can help it." Jesse's voice was fierce in the darkness. "This land is all I've got left of my father's good years, before the drinking got bad. It's where I buried Rebecca. It's where I planned to build something that mattered. I'm not giving it up without a fight." "Then we'll fight." Isabel turned onto her side, facing him, even though she could barely see him in the darkness. "Whatever it takes, Jesse, we'll fight." She heard him exhale slowly. "You don't know what you're signing up for." "Yes, I do. I'm signing up for a life, a real life, with someone who sees me and doesn't look away. That's worth fighting for." The silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. Finally, Jesse spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "You scare me, Isabel." "Why?" "Because I'm starting to care what happens to you. And caring about people, it's gotten me nothing but pain." Isabel's heart cracked open. "Then don't care about me." Too late for that. Isabel reached across the darkness between them, found his hand, and held it. Jesse's fingers tightened around hers like a drowning man gripping a rope. Neither of them said anything else. Neither of them needed to. The next morning, Isabel woke to an empty bed and the smell of burning coffee. She hurried downstairs to find Jesse standing at the stove, staring at a pot that was smoking ominously. "Move," Isabel said, grabbing a cloth and yanking the pot off the heat. "What were you trying to do? Burn the house down?" "I was trying to make you breakfast." Jesse ran a hand through his hair, looking embarrassed. "Figured you'd done it for me every day since you got here." Something in Isabel's chest melted. "That's actually very sweet. And very dangerous. I'm better with horses than coffee pots." "I noticed." Isabel dumped the ruined coffee and started fresh. "Go check on the horses. I'll make something we can actually eat." Jesse hesitated, then leaned down and pressed a quick kiss to her temple before heading out. The casual intimacy of it stunned Isabel into stillness. When had that become natural? When had they stopped being strangers sharing a house and started being something more? Thomas came in while she was frying eggs, his expression knowing. "Heard Morrison paid a visit yesterday." News travels fast. In a town this small, faster than wildfire. Thomas poured himself coffee. "You should know, Isabel. People are taking sides. The Morrisons have money and influence. Jesse has stubbornness and pride. It's not an even fight." "Then we'll have to be smarter, not stronger." Thomas studied her over the rim of his cup. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone who'd run at the first sign of trouble. Someone who'd push Jesse to sell and move somewhere easier." He set his cup down. "I'm glad I was wrong." Jesse returned with news that made Isabel's stomach drop. 3 more fence posts cut during the night. North pasture. They're trying to spook the horses onto Morrison's land so he can claim their strays. "That's theft," Isabel said. "That's Wyoming." Jesse's jaw was tight. "And unless I catch them in the act, I can't prove anything." "Then we catch them." Isabel looked between Jesse and Thomas. "We set up a watch. Take turns through the night. Someone's eyes on that fence line at all times." "That means no one sleeps properly," Thomas pointed out. "Better tired than robbed." Jesse looked at her, something fierce and proud in his expression. "You sure about this?" "I'm sure about us not losing what's ours." They started that night. Jesse took first watch until midnight, then Thomas until 3, then Isabel until dawn. It was exhausting, cold work, sitting in the darkness with a rifle across her lap, watching for movement that might or might not come. But Isabel refused to complain. This was her ranch now, too. Her life. Her fight. On the third night of the watch, Isabel saw them. 4 men on horseback, moving quiet and careful toward the fence line with wire cutters gleaming in the moonlight. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she grabbed the bell Jesse had given her and rang it hard. Within seconds, Jesse burst from the house, Thomas from his cabin, both armed and running. The men at the fence scattered, but not before Jesse got close enough to recognize one of them. "Frank Morrison," Jesse spat. "Catherine's brother." "You can't prove anything," Frank called from the safety of distance. "Could have been anyone out here." "I saw you," Isabel shouted, stepping forward with her rifle raised. "4 witnesses now, Frank. You and the 3 ranch hands with you. A wife's testimony doesn't count for anything. Everyone knows women lie to protect their husbands." "Then I guess we'll see what Judge Thornton thinks about that." Jesse's voice was deadly calm. "Because I'm pressing charges. Breaking and entering, attempted theft, destruction of property." Frank's laugh was harsh. "You think any judge in this county will side with you over my father? You're delusional, Blackwell." "Maybe, but I'm going to try anyway." Jesse raised his rifle. "Now get off my land before I give you a reason to visit the doctor instead of the judge." They left, but the threat in the air remained. Jesse paced the kitchen while Isabel made coffee with shaking hands, adrenaline still coursing through her. "That was incredibly stupid and incredibly brave," Jesse said finally. "Which part?" "The part where you stepped in front of a loaded rifle to back me up. You think I was going to let them intimidate us?" "I think you could have been shot." Jesse grabbed her shoulders, his grip tight enough to hurt. "Isabel, when I heard that bell, when I saw you standing there facing down 4 armed men, I had a rifle too." "That's not the point." His voice cracked. "You could have been killed. And I realized in that moment that if something happened to you, if they hurt you because of me—" Isabel placed her hands over his. "Nothing happened to me. I'm fine." "This time. What about next time?" "Next time we'll be ready. Next time we'll—" "There shouldn't be a next time." Jesse released her suddenly, stepping back. "Maybe Morrison's right. Maybe I should just sell and get you somewhere safe." "Don't you dare!" Isabel's voice was fierce. "Don't you dare use me as an excuse to give up on everything you've worked for. I didn't come here to make you weak, Jesse. I came here to make us both stronger." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've already lost everything once. And surviving that taught me what's worth fighting for." She moved closer, forcing him to meet her eyes. "This ranch, this life, you're worth fighting for. And I won't let you quit just because you're scared of losing me." Jesse stared at her, breathing hard. Then he pulled her against him, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "You're going to be the death of me, woman." "Or the making of you." Isabel pressed her face into his chest, feeling his heart thunder against her cheek. "Haven't decided which yet." The next morning, they rode into town to file charges. Judge Thornton listened to their story with a grave expression, made notes in his ledger, and finally sat back with a heavy sigh. "Jesse, I believe you, but you need to understand what you're up against here. Morrison's going to bring lawyers from Denver. He's going to drag this out until you can't afford to keep fighting." "So you're saying I should give up?" "I'm saying you should be realistic about your chances." The judge looked at Isabel. "Mrs. Blackwell, do you understand what this fight is going to cost you? Not just money, but socially. The Morrisons have friends, a lot of friends. Those friends won't take kindly to you accusing Frank Morrison of a crime." "I know what I saw," Isabel said steadily, "and I respect that. But respect doesn't win court cases. Evidence does. And your testimony alone is that of a wife, Isabel finished. Which means nothing. In the eyes of the law, it's shaky ground. Judge Thornton pushed his ledger away. I'm going to file these charges, but I want you both to think long and hard about whether this is a battle you can win. Sometimes retreat is the smarter option. Outside the courthouse, Catherine Morrison was waiting. She looked like she'd been standing there a while, her expensive dress perfect despite the dust, her smile sharp as a knife. Well, well, the happy couple. Come to cry to the judge about my poor, innocent brother? He's guilty and you know it, Jesse said flatly. What I know is that you're finished in this town. My father's already spoken to the bank. Your loan comes due in 6 months, Jesse, and when it does, they're not going to extend it. Catherine's eyes glittered with malicious pleasure. You'll lose the ranch anyway. Might as well sell now and save yourself the humiliation. What loan? Isabel heard herself ask. The silence that followed was deafening. Jesse's face had gone white. Oh, she doesn't know, Catherine purred. How delightful. Jesse, did you forget to mention to your mail-order bride that you're mortgaged to the hilt? That you took out a loan to pay for your first wife's medical bills? That you're one bad winter away from bankruptcy? That's enough, Jesse growled. No, I don't think it is. Catherine stepped closer to Isabel, her voice poisonously sweet. Did he tell you he's been struggling to make payments for 2 years? Did he mention that's why he needed a wife? Someone to work the ranch for free? Someone who'd be desperate enough not to ask questions? Get away from her, Jesse snapped. But Isabel held up a hand. Is it true? Jesse's jaw worked. Yes, the loan is real. I took it out 3 years ago when Rebecca got sick. The bank's been patient, but Morrison's been pressuring them to call it in early. And you didn't tell me this because I didn't want you to think I married you for your labor. Because I didn't want you to feel trapped. Jesse's voice was raw. Because I'm ashamed that I can't protect what's mine without going into debt. Catherine laughed. How romantic. Star-crossed lovers drowning in debt together. This is better than I imagined. Isabel turned to face Catherine fully. You're right about one thing. My husband is in debt. But you're wrong about why he married me. And you're wrong if you think this changes anything. Really? You going to stand by a man who lied to you? He didn't lie. He just didn't tell me everything on the first day. Isabel's voice was steady. And since I didn't tell him about the money my mother left me, the money I converted to cash before I came west, I guess we're even. Jesse's head snapped toward her. What? My mother had a small inheritance from her parents. My father never knew about it, hidden in a bank account under her maiden name. She left it to me. Isabel kept her eyes on Catherine's shocked face. $15,000. It's in my carpet bag, under the false bottom. The world seemed to tilt. Jesse grabbed Isabel's arm. Tell me you're lying. I'm not. You've been carrying $15,000 around, and you didn't think to mention it? I was going to tell you after we were married. But then Morrison showed up, and everything got complicated, and... Isabel finally looked at him. I was afraid you'd only want me for the money. Catherine recovered first. Well, isn't this interesting? My father will be thrilled to know you've got cash. Makes it easier to squeeze you. Or easier to pay off our debts and tell your father to go to hell, Isabel shot back. How much do you owe the bank? $12,000, Jesse said faintly, plus interest. Then we pay it, tomorrow, in full. Isabel turned back to Catherine. Tell your father he's going to have to find another way to steal our ranch, because we're not going anywhere. Catherine's face twisted with fury. You think money solves everything? You're stupider than you look. And you're meaner than you look, which is saying something. Isabel took Jesse's arm. Come on, we're done here. They walked to the wagon in stunned silence. Jesse helped her up without speaking, climbed up beside her, and just sat there, reins loose in his hands. Say something, Isabel finally whispered. I don't know what to say. Jesse's voice was hoarse. You had money this whole time, real money. And you were mucking stalls and mending fence posts and sleeping in my drafty house, our house, when you could have gone anywhere, been anything, done anything. I was doing what I wanted to do. Isabel grabbed his hand. Jesse, I didn't come west because I had no options. I came because I wanted a life where I mattered, where someone needed me for more than what I could buy or what I looked like, or what family I came from. You should have told me. Yes, I should have. And you should have told me about the loan. So I guess we're both idiots who don't trust easy. She squeezed his hand. Can we be idiots together? Or is this the part where you decide I'm too much trouble? Jesse turned to look at her, and his eyes were wet. You just saved everything I've been fighting for. Everything I thought I was going to lose. And you're asking if you're too much trouble? You're crying.
Because I've been carrying the weight of that debt for 3 years, wondering how I was going to save the ranch, wondering if I'd end up like my father, losing everything to bad luck and worse decisions. His voice broke. And then you show up in your plain dress with your honest letter, and you turn out to be the strongest, bravest, most infuriating woman I've ever met. And now you're telling me you can save us both. How am I supposed to? Isabel kissed him, hard and desperate and real. Jesse froze for half a heartbeat, then kissed her back like a drowning man finding air. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. We save each other, Isabel whispered against his lips. That's how this works. You saved me from a life where I was invisible. I'm saving you from losing your home. And tomorrow, we're going to walk into that bank together and pay off your debt. Together. Together, Jesse repeated. And this time, the word sounded like a promise. They went to the bank the next morning before the sun was fully up. Isabel carried her carpet bag, the false bottom open to reveal neat stacks of bills. The bank manager's eyes widened when Jesse laid out the payment schedule, and Isabel counted out $12,500 in cash. This pays off the mortgage in full, Jesse said, plus interest through the end of the year. I want the deed back. Today. The manager stammered something about needing approval, but Jesse leaned across the desk with a look that could melt steel. You call whoever you need to call, but we're not leaving here without that deed. 2 hours later, they walked out of the bank with the mortgage papers marked Paid in Full and the deed to the ranch in Jesse's hand. He stared at it like he couldn't believe it was real. We did it, he said wonderingly. We did it, Isabel confirmed. Isabel, Jesse stopped walking, turned to face her fully. What you did, what you gave up for me. I didn't give up anything. I invested it. In us. In our future. She took his hand. That money was my mother's. She'd want it used to build something real, something that matters. It matters, Jesse said roughly. You matter. More than you know. They were standing in the middle of the street, and people were staring, but Isabel didn't care. Say it again. You matter. No, the other part. Jesse's eyes darkened. You matter more than you know, more than I can say, more than... He pulled her close. I'm falling in love with you, Isabel, and it scares the hell out of me. Isabel's breath caught. Why does it scare you? Because everyone I've ever loved has left me. My mother died when I was 8, My father drank himself to death. Rebecca died in my arms. And now you're here, and you're real, and you're mine. And I keep waiting for something to take you away, too. I'm not going anywhere. Isabel gripped his coat. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Every single day, Jesse. I'm choosing you. Someone behind them cleared their throat loudly. They turned to find Thomas standing there with the wagon, looking amused. You two planning to stand in the street all day declaring your feelings? Or are we going home? Because I've got work to do, even if you don't. Jesse laughed. A real, full laugh that made Isabel's heart soar. We're going home. Home. The word had never sounded so good. But when they crested the hill and saw the ranch, Isabel's joy turned to ice. Smoke was rising from the barn. No, Jesse breathed. No, no, no. He kicked the horses into a gallop, the wagon careening dangerously over the rutted road. Isabel held on, her heart in her throat, watching the smoke get thicker as they got closer. By the time they reached the house, flames were visible through the barn's upper windows. Jesse was out of the wagon before it fully stopped, running toward the barn. Thomas grabbed fire buckets and started for the well. Isabel jumped down and ran after Jesse. The horses! Jesse was shouting. We have to get the horses out! The barn door was blocked by fallen timber, already burning. Jesse grabbed an axe and started hacking at it, and Isabel seized another bucket, running for the well pump. Her arms screamed as she hauled water, passed buckets to Thomas, ran back for more. The heat was incredible, the smoke choking. Jesse finally broke through the door and plunged into the burning barn. Isabel screamed his name, but he was already gone, swallowed by smoke and flame. Seconds crawled by like hours. Then Jesse emerged, leading 2 panicked horses, his face black with soot, his clothes singed. 6 more, he gasped. Thomas, help me. They went back in together. Isabel kept hauling water, throwing it on the flames closest to the door, trying to keep the entrance clear. 2 more horses came out. Then 2 more, but the smoke was getting thicker, the heat more intense. Jesse! Isabel screamed. Get out! The roof's going to collapse! A beam fell with a crash that shook the ground. Isabel's heart stopped. Then Jesse and Thomas burst from the barn, dragging the last 2 horses between them. They'd barely cleared the doorway when the roof caved in with a roar, sending sparks and embers shooting into the sky. They collapsed in the dirt, coughing and gasping. Isabel fell to her knees beside Jesse, running her hands over him frantically, checking for injuries. I'm fine, Jesse wheezed. The horses are all alive. You got them all out. Isabel pressed her face against his soot-stained neck and shook. You stupid, brave, impossible man. Wasn't an accident, Thomas said hoarsely, pointing to something on the ground near the barn's entrance. An oil can. Empty. Someone set this. Jesse's expression went from exhausted to murderous in a heartbeat. Morrison. Can you prove it? Isabel asked, even though she knew the answer. No, but I know it was him. Jesse struggled to his feet, swaying. This is war now. He's not trying to buy me out anymore. He's trying to destroy me. Then we destroy him first, Isabel said, and the coldness in her voice made both men turn to stare at her. Isabel, no, listen to me. She stood, soot-streaked and furious. Morrison thinks we're weak. He thinks burning our barn will break us. He thinks we'll run scared, or sell cheap, or just give up. But he's wrong. What are you suggesting? Thomas asked carefully. I'm suggesting we stop playing defense and start playing offense. Morrison wants a war? Let's give him one. Isabel's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. What does he care about most? Money, Jesse said immediately. His reputation. His control. Then we go after all 3. Isabel moved toward the house. We need to think like him. What's his next move? Jesse followed her inside. Thomas close behind. They gathered around the kitchen table, and Isabel started pacing. The barn was meant to scare us, to show us he can strike whenever he wants. But it also proves he's desperate. She turned to Jesse. If he was confident the law would side with him, he wouldn't need to resort to arson. Which means Judge Thornton's willingness to file charges has him worried. He's got lawyers who'll tie that up for years, Jesse said. Maybe, but what if we don't give him years? Isabel's mind was racing. What if we force his hand right now? Make him show the town what kind of man he really is. How? We call a town meeting. We show everyone the oil can. We tell them about the fence cutting, about Frank Morrison sneaking onto our property at night. We make this public. Isabel slammed her hand on the table. We make him defend himself in front of everyone. Thomas shook his head. The town's too afraid of Morrison to stand against him. Some of them are, but not all of them. Isabel looked at Jesse. You've lived here your whole life. There must be others who've been hurt by Morrison's land grabs, others who've been bullied or threatened or pushed out. Jesse was quiet for a moment. Then something shifted in his expression. The Hendersons. Morrison tried to buy their land 2 years ago. When they refused, their water well mysteriously dried up. And the Chens, Thomas added. Their supply contracts got canceled right after they testified against Morrison in a property dispute. So we're not alone. Isabel felt hope flicker. We gather everyone Morrison's ever wronged. We stand together. And we tell the truth loud enough that even his money can't silence it. That's dangerous, Jesse said. Morrison could retaliate against anyone who speaks up. He's already retaliating. Against us. Against anyone who gets in his way. Isabel grabbed Jesse's soot-blackened hands. We can't win this alone. But together, with everyone he's ever hurt standing up at once, he can't fight all of us. Jesse stared at her, and something in his eyes caught fire. You're magnificent. You know that? I'm furious. There's a difference. I'm not sure there is. Not with you. Jesse pulled her close, kissed her hard, then released her. Thomas, ride to the Henderson place. Tell them what happened. Tell them we're calling a meeting at the church tomorrow night. Anyone who's got a grievance against Morrison Land Company, we want them there. I'll go to the Chens, Isabel said, and anyone else you can think of. They spent the rest of the day riding to neighboring ranches, telling their story, watching faces go from sympathetic to angry to determined. By sunset, Isabel's voice was hoarse, but she'd secured promises from 8 families to attend the meeting. When she returned home, Jesse had built a temporary shelter for the horses and was working on plans to rebuild the barn. He looked exhausted, and when Isabel brought him coffee, he pulled her down beside him on the porch steps. We've got 12 families confirmed for tomorrow, he said. Plus Thomas knows of 3 more in town who might come. That's good. It's also terrifying. Jesse rubbed his face. If this goes wrong, we're not just risking ourselves anymore. We're risking everyone who stands with us. And if we do nothing? Morrison wins. He always wins. Not this time. Isabel leaned her head on his shoulder. This time, we're changing the rules. They sat in silence as the sun set, both too tired and too wired to sleep. Finally, Jesse spoke again. Isabel, if something happens to me, don't. No, listen. If Morrison decides to get rid of me, I need you to promise you'll take whatever's left and go. Don't try to fight him alone. I'm not promising that. Damn it, Isabel. No, you don't get to make me promise to give up. Not after everything we've built. She turned to face him. We're in this together, remember? That was the deal. For better or worse. Those are wedding vows. Well, we're married, aren't we? Isabel touched his face. So you're stuck with me, Jesse Blackwell, in sickness and health, till death do us part. And I'm not letting death have you anytime soon. Jesse's kiss tasted like smoke and desperation, and something that might have been love. When they finally went inside, they climbed the stairs together, and this time when Jesse undressed down to his undershirt and trousers, Isabel didn't look away. This time, when they lay down in the bed they'd been sharing for weeks, Isabel moved close instead of keeping distance. "Hold me," she whispered. Jesse's arms came around her, strong and sure. Always. The next evening, the church was packed. Isabel counted at least 20 families, plus several single men, and even a few people she didn't recognize. Judge Thornton was there, sitting in the back with his arms crossed and his expression grave. And standing near the front, looking furious and dangerous, was Morrison himself, with Catherine and Frank flanking him. "You didn't invite him," Isabel hissed to Jesse. "Didn't have to. Someone talked. Probably one of his spies." Jesse's jaw was tight. "Doesn't matter. Let him hear what we have to say." Jesse stood first, and the room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming. Most of you know me. No, I'm not one for speeches or politics. But yesterday, someone burned down my barn. Could have killed my horses. Could have killed me or my wife. And I'm done pretending this is just business as usual." He held up the oil can. "This was found at the scene. This is arson. This is attempted murder. And I know who's behind it." Morrison stood smoothly. "That's a serious accusation, Blackwell. You got proof? Or just the word of a desperate man trying to avoid paying his debts?" "I paid my debts," Jesse said coldly. "Paid them in full 2 days ago, which you know because the bank manager's on your payroll." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Morrison's smile didn't waver. "I'm a businessman. I have business relationships. That doesn't make me an arsonist." "No, but sending your son to cut my fence lines in the middle of the night makes you a thief. And I've got witnesses to that, too." Frank Morrison stood up, his face red. "You calling me a liar?" "I'm calling you a criminal," Isabel said, rising from her seat. "I saw you myself. You and 3 other men, trying to steal our horses by cutting the fence and driving them onto your father's land." Catherine laughed. "The word of a mail-order bride against a Morrison? That's rich. The word of 20 people against a Morrison?" Mrs. Henderson stood up, her voice shaking but determined. "Because my family lost everything when our well dried up, right after we refused to sell to you, Mr. Morrison. The surveyor said it was sabotage, said someone dumped chemicals in the aquifer." "That's speculation," Morrison snapped. "What about my contracts?" Mr. Chen rose. "I had a deal with the general store, exclusive supply agreement. Then I testified in court about your property boundary dispute, and suddenly the store cancels. Tells me they've got a better offer." "From who?" "Your company." More people stood. A widow whose husband died in a suspicious accident after crossing Morrison. A rancher whose cattle started dying from poisoned water. A shopkeeper whose business burned down after he refused to sell his building. Story after story, each one damning, each one painting a picture of a man who used fear and violence to get what he wanted. Morrison's face had gone red, then white. "These are all lies, coincidences. You people are just bitter because you failed where I succeeded. We failed because you sabotaged us," Jesse said. "And now we're done being afraid of you." "Afraid?" Morrison's voice rose. "You should be afraid, all of you, because I own this town. I own the sheriff. I own half the county. And anyone who stands against me is going to learn what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Judge Thornton stood up. "That sounded an awful lot like a confession, Morrison, and a threat." The judge's voice was hard. "As an officer of the court,
I'm officially noting your words, and I'm ordering an investigation into every claim made here tonight." "You can't do that. You don't have jurisdiction." "I have enough jurisdiction to ask questions, and I know federal marshals who'd be real interested in hearing about railroad corruption, land fraud, and attempted murder." Judge Thornton moved toward the door.
"I suggest you get yourself a good lawyer, Morrison. You're going to need one." Morrison's face twisted with rage.
"You're all going to regret this. Every single one of you. I'll destroy you. You'll do nothing." Jesse's voice cut through the threats like a blade. "Because the whole town just heard you threaten witnesses and confirm your crimes. And if anything happens to any of us, everyone will know it was you." "Get out," Morrison snarled at Jesse. "Get out before you what? Burn down the church? In front of 20 witnesses and a judge?" Isabel stepped forward. "You've already lost, Mr. Morrison. You just don't know it yet." Morrison's hand moved toward his coat, and for one terrible moment, Isabel thought he was reaching for a gun. But Thomas was suddenly there, his own weapon drawn, his voice deadly calm. "Don't be stupid, Morrison. Not here. Not now." Morrison's hand fell.
He looked around the room at all the faces staring at him with anger and contempt and determination, and something in him seemed to crack. "This isn't over," he said, but the words lacked conviction. "Yes," Isabel said quietly. "It is." Morrison stormed out, Catherine and Frank scrambling after him. The moment the door closed, the church erupted in nervous chatter. People crowded around Jesse and Isabel, thanking them, sharing more stories, making plans to document everything and take it to the federal authorities. Judge Thornton pulled Jesse aside. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen." "Probably both," Jesse admitted. "Morrison's going to retaliate. Tonight, tomorrow, soon. He won't let this stand." "Let him try. This time, we're ready." But as they rode home that night, surrounded by neighbors who'd insisted on escorting them for safety, Isabel felt dread creeping up her spine. They'd won the battle, but Morrison was right about one thing. This wasn't over. When they reached the ranch, Thomas insisted on staying at the house rather than his cabin. "Extra eyes," he said simply. Isabel made coffee while the men checked every window, every door, every possible entry point. The horses were restless in their temporary shelter, sensing the tension. Isabel brought Jesse a cup and found him standing by the window, rifle in hand, staring out at the darkness. "Come to bed," she said softly. "Can't. Not until I know we're safe." "Then I'll stay up with you." They sat together in the darkness, watching and waiting. Around midnight, Isabel's head drooped against Jesse's shoulder. He shifted carefully, letting her rest more comfortably, and kept his vigil. The attack came at 3 a.m, not with fire this time, but with gunshots that shattered the kitchen window and tore through the walls. Isabel screamed, and Jesse threw her to the floor, covering her body with his as more shots rang out. "Thomas!" Jesse shouted. "I see them!" Thomas was already returning fire from the upstairs window. "4 riders, maybe 5. Jesse crawled to the broken window, glass crunching under his knees, and fired into the darkness. Isabel grabbed the spare rifle and moved to the opposite window, her hands steady despite her racing heart. "Isabel, no!" "Shut up and shoot!" she snapped, took aim, and fired. One of the riders cried out and fell from his horse. The attackers scattered, their horses panicking. More shots, more breaking glass, and then suddenly, silence. The riders were gone, vanished into the night as quickly as they'd come. Jesse pulled Isabel back from the window, running his hands over her frantically. "Are you hurt? Did anything hit you?" I'm fine. But she was shaking now, the adrenaline draining away and leaving her weak. Did I kill him?" Don't know. Don't care. Jesse held her tight. You defended yourself. That's all that matters. Thomas came downstairs, his face grim. Found blood on the ground. He definitely hit one of them. They dragged him off with them when they retreated. They'll be back, Jesse said. Maybe, but they know now that we shoot back. Thomas reloaded his rifle. That changes things. The rest of the night passed in tense silence. When dawn finally broke, they found spent shell casings scattered around the house and blood trails leading away. Isabel counted 17 bullet holes in the walls and windows. They'd been lucky. So very lucky. But luck would only carry them so far. We need to get the marshal involved, Isabel said over breakfast that none of them could eat. This is attempted murder. Multiple witnesses. We can't let Morrison get away with this. The nearest federal marshal is 3 days' ride away, Thomas pointed out. And Morrison could hit us again before then. Then we send someone fast, now. Isabel looked at Thomas. You're the best rider. Can you make it to Denver in 2 days if you push hard? I can try. Then go. Take our fastest horse. Don't stop except to change mounts. Jesse pulled out money from their rapidly dwindling cash. Whatever it takes. We need federal help, and we need it now. Thomas left within the hour. Isabel and Jesse were alone, facing an enemy who'd already tried to kill them once and would certainly try again. They boarded up the broken windows, reinforced the doors, and took inventory of their ammunition. We've got enough for maybe 2 more fights like last night, Jesse said. After that, we're defenseless. Then we'd better make those 2 fights count. That afternoon, a rider approached. Isabel grabbed her rifle, but Jesse stopped her. That's the sheriff. Sheriff Graves was a portly man in his 50s, who'd clearly been bought by Morrison long ago. He dismounted slowly, hands visible, and approached the house. Jesse, Mrs. Blackwell, heard there was some trouble out here last night. Some trouble? Jesse's voice was ice. Someone shot up our house, nearly killed us, and you call that some trouble? Well now, I don't have any witnesses saying who did the shooting. Could have been anyone. It was Morrison's men, same ones who burned my barn. Can you prove that? I can prove you're on Morrison's payroll, Isabel said coldly. Judge Thornton mentioned it at the meeting. How much does he pay you to look the other way, Sheriff? Graves' face reddened. You watch your mouth, woman. Or what? You'll arrest me? On what charges? Being married to a man Morrison wants dead? Isabel stepped forward. We've sent for the federal marshal. He'll be here in 3 days, and when he arrives, he's going to want to know why the local sheriff did nothing while citizens were being murdered. Nobody's been murdered. Yet, Jesse added. But if anyone dies before that marshal gets here, you're going to be an accessory. Think about that before you decide whose side you're on. The sheriff looked between them, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he spat in the dirt and mounted his horse. You people are fools. Morrison always wins. Always. He kicked his horse into a trot. Don't say I didn't warn you. As he rode away, Isabel felt something cold settle in her chest. They were running out of time. Morrison wouldn't wait 3 days for the marshal to arrive. He'd strike again, and soon. Jesse, she said quietly, what if we don't wait for him to come to us? What if we go to him? What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we ride into town. In broad daylight. We walk into Morrison's office and we tell him exactly what's going to happen when the marshal arrives. We make him understand that he's already lost. That's insane. He'll kill us. In his office? In the middle of town? In front of witnesses? Isabel shook her head. Morrison's a coward. He sends other people to do his dirty work. He won't risk doing anything himself where people can see. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because bullies are always cowards at heart, and Morrison is a bully. Isabel grabbed Jesse's hands. "We've been reacting to him this whole time. Let's make him react to us for once." Jesse stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. "You're either brilliant or crazy. Why not both?" They rode into town at noon the next day, armed but not hiding it, their faces set with determination. People stared as they passed, whispers following them. Morrison Land Company's office was in the center of town, a grand two-story building that screamed wealth and power. Isabel tied her horse and walked in first, Jesse right behind her. Morrison was at his desk, and the shock on his face when he saw them was almost worth the risk.
"Get out," he snarled.
"No," Isabel said simply. "We're here to tell you how this ends." Morrison's hand moved toward his desk drawer, but Jesse's gun was already drawn, aimed steady at Morrison's chest.
"I wouldn't."
"You're threatening me? In my own office?" Morrison's voice shook with rage.
"I'll have you arrested."
"For what? Defending ourselves against a man who's tried to murder us twice in 3 days?" Isabel moved closer to his desk, fearless. "Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Morrison. In 2 days, a federal marshal arrives from Denver. He's going to investigate every claim made at that church meeting. Every burned barn, every poisoned well, every suspicious death. And when he's done, you're going to prison."
"You're delusional. I have lawyers who—"
"Your lawyers can't help you when 20 families testify against you. When Judge Thornton confirms you threatened witnesses in front of him. When the physical evidence proves you committed arson and attempted murder." Jesse's voice was hard as iron. "You're finished." Morrison stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. "You think you've won? You think anyone in this town will stand with you over me? I made this town. I own it." "You used to," Isabel corrected. "But fear only works until people realize they're stronger together than apart. And last night, when your men shot up our house, you proved you're not invincible. You're just desperate." "That wasn't my—" "Don't lie." Jesse stepped forward. "We found one of your ranch hand's hats in the dirt. Had his initials stitched inside. Sam Patterson. He's on your payroll. We checked." Morrison's face went white. "That proves nothing." "It proves enough." Isabel pulled a document from her coat. "This is a signed statement from Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Chen, and 14 other families detailing your crimes. Judge Thornton has the original. This is your copy. So when the marshal asks what you're being accused of, you'll have it all written out, nice and clear." She dropped it on his desk. Morrison stared at it like it was a snake. "You still have one option," Jesse said. "You can leave. Sell your company, take your family, and go somewhere else. Start over where nobody knows what you've done." "Leave? My family built this territory. I'm not going anywhere." "Then you'll hang." Isabel's voice was flat. "Because that's what happens to men who murder innocent people. They hang." Morrison's composure finally cracked. "You don't know what you're dealing with. The railroad needs that route. They've got government contracts, federal backing. They'll steamroll right over you." "Let them try," Jesse said. "My deed is clean. My debt is paid. And I've got 20 families ready to stand with me and block any railroad that tries to run through our land without proper compensation and consent. The government will use eminent domain, not without a fight, not without publicity, not without every newspaper in the territory hearing about how railroad companies bully honest ranchers." Isabel leaned on Morrison's desk. "See, that's what you never understood. You thought power meant being feared. But real power is being respected. And right now, we have something you'll never have. People who'll stand with us because they believe in us, not because they're afraid of us." Morrison sank back into his chair, and for the first time, he looked old, defeated. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. We just wanted you to know that we're not afraid anymore." Jesse holstered his gun. And that everything you've done is going to catch up with you. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But soon. They turned to leave, and Morrison's voice stopped them. Your wife's money won't protect you forever, Blackwell. When that runs out, you'll be right back where you started. No, Isabel said, turning back. Because when my money runs out, I'll still have a partner who sees me, respects me, and stands with me. And you'll still be a miserable old man who buys people because nobody would choose to stand with you willingly. I know which life I'd rather have. They walked out into the bright afternoon sun, and Isabel realized she was shaking. Not from fear this time, but from the sheer adrenaline of facing down the man who'd tried to destroy them. That was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the stupidest, Jesse said, echoing his words from before. Definitely both. Isabel grabbed his hand. But we did it. We looked him in the eye, and we didn't blink. He's going to hit back harder now. Let him try. We're not alone anymore. They weren't. As they rode home, neighbors called out to them, waved, offered words of support. The Henderson family rode up alongside them for the last mile, insisting on escorting them home. Mr. Chen was waiting at their ranch with 3 of his sons, all armed. We're taking shifts, Chen said simply. Guard duty, until the marshal gets here. You don't have to do this, Jesse protested. Yes, we do. You stood up first. Now we stand with you. Chen's expression was firm. Morrison wants a war. He's got one. But not against one ranch. Against all of us. That night, 8 men took up positions around the ranch. Isabel cooked for all of them, and the kitchen was crowded and warm and full of voices. Jesse kept touching her, a hand on her back as he passed, fingers brushing hers when she handed him coffee, like he needed to confirm she was real. What? Isabel asked when she caught him staring. I'm trying to figure out what I did to deserve you. You answered my letter. That's all. She moved closer. You read about a plain woman with nothing to offer, and you said yes anyway. You're not plain. You never were. Jesse touched her face. You're beautiful in every way that matters, and I love you. I should have said it before. Should have said it every day since you got here. I love you, Isabel. Isabel's eyes burned. Say it again. I love you. Again. I love you. Jesse kissed her, deep and thorough, and someone in the kitchen whistled. They broke apart, both flushed, and found every man in the room grinning at them. About time, Mr. Chen said dryly. The next day, Thomas returned with news that made Isabel's heart soar. Marshal's coming. Should be here tomorrow. And he's bringing 2 deputies and a federal prosecutor. They're taking this seriously. Thank God, Jesse breathed. But the victory celebration was short-lived. Just after sunset, a rider came tearing up to the house. Frank Morrison, of all people. His face bruised and his clothes torn. Don't shoot, he gasped, falling off his horse. Please, I need help. Jesse grabbed him by the collar. Give me one reason not to throw you off my land. Because my father's planning to kill you tonight. All of you. Everyone who testified at that meeting. Frank's words tumbled out in a rush. He's got 15 men. They're coming at midnight. They're going to burn every house, kill anyone who fights back, and make it look like a range war. Why are you telling us this? Isabel demanded. Because I'm done. Frank's voice broke. I watched him beat my mother last night when she tried to stop him. I watched him threaten my sister when she said this had gone too far. And I realized I'm just as much his prisoner as everyone else in this town. Jesse released him. You're lying. This is a trap. It's not. I swear on my mother's life. Frank pulled out a paper. Here, it's the plan. He wrote it all down. Where they're hitting first, how many men at each location. He was so confident nobody would stop him that he didn't even hide it. Thomas grabbed the paper, scanned it. It's detailed, very detailed. If this is real, we need to warn everyone, now. Isabel was already moving. Frank, if you're lying to us, I'm not, and I'll prove it. I'll testify against him. Everything he's done, everything he's planned. I'll tell it all to the marshal. Jesse studied Frank's face, looking for deception. Finally, he nodded. Thomas, take Frank to Judge Thornton. Have him put Frank in protective custody. If he's telling the truth, Morrison will kill him for betraying him. I know. Frank's voice was hollow. He's my father, and I know he'll kill me. But I can't let him kill innocent people. Not anymore. Thomas hauled Frank onto a horse, and they rode for town. Jesse started barking orders, sending riders to every family on Morrison's list, warning them, telling them to gather at the ranch where they could defend together. Within an hour, the ranch was overflowing with people. Women and children in the house, men positioned around the property with weapons and torches lit to show there would be no easy surprise attack. Isabel moved through the chaos, distributing ammunition, food, water, keeping everyone organized. You're good at this, Mrs. Henderson said. Keeping people calm. I'm terrified. I'm just good at hiding it. Isabel reloaded another rifle. How are you so steady? Because you and Jesse gave us hope. First time in years I haven't felt helpless. Worth being scared for. At 11:30, riders appeared on the horizon. Isabel counted 14, matching Frank's information almost exactly. They approached slowly, then stopped when they saw the assembled defense, at least 30 armed people standing ready. Morrison rode forward alone, and even in the torchlight, Isabel could see his rage. You were warned, Blackwell. So were you. Jesse stepped into the open, rifle in hand. Federal marshal arrives tomorrow. If anyone dies tonight, you'll hang for it. Not in a territory court you can bribe. In a federal court. My son betrayed me, told you everything. Morrison's voice was savage. Fine. No more subtlety. No more playing games. I'm taking what's mine. This land isn't yours, Isabel called out. It never was. And you're not taking it. Not tonight. Not ever. Morrison raised his hand, and his men drew weapons. The defenders raised theirs. For a moment, everyone stood frozen, balanced on the edge of violence. Then the sound of more horses, coming fast. Everyone turned. A man in a federal marshal's star rode in with 4 deputies, guns drawn. Federal Marshal James Harding, he announced. Nobody moves. Nobody shoots. Morrison's face went from rage to shock to calculation in seconds. Marshal, thank God you're here. These people have been threatening me, plotting against... Save it. Marshal Harding dismounted. I've been in town for 2 hours. I've already spoken with Judge Thornton, reviewed the evidence, and taken statements from Frank Morrison. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, arson, attempted murder, extortion, and about 15 other charges. This is ridiculous. I'm a respected businessman. You're a criminal. The marshal's voice was hard. And you're done. Morrison tried to run. He kicked his horse, wheeling away from the marshal. But Thomas was there, grabbing the reins, pulling Morrison from the saddle. Morrison hit the ground hard and came up swinging. Thomas dodged, then landed a punch that dropped Morrison like a stone. That's for every family you destroyed, Thomas said quietly. Morrison's men threw down their weapons. None of them were willing to die for a man who was clearly finished. The deputies rounded them up, while Marshal Harding cuffed Morrison himself. You'll regret this, Morrison snarled at Jesse. All of you will regret this. No, Jesse said calmly. I don't think we will. As they led Morrison away, Catherine emerged from the crowd. She looked smaller somehow, less polished, more human. I'm sorry, she said to Isabel, "for everything I said, everything I did. I was angry and jealous and stupid." "You were hurt," Isabel said. "There's a difference. He's my father. I should have stopped him." "You couldn't have. Men like him don't stop until they're forced to." Isabel touched Catherine's arm briefly. "But you can help now. Testify against him. Tell the truth. Help make sure he can't hurt anyone else." Catherine nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I will. I promise." The trial took 3 weeks. Isabel and Jesse testified, as did Thomas, Judge Thornton, Frank Morrison, and 19 families who'd suffered under Morrison's reign. The evidence was overwhelming. The federal prosecutor was thorough and merciless. Morrison was convicted on 12 counts and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. His company was dissolved, his assets sold to pay restitution to his victims. Frank Morrison was granted immunity in exchange for his testimony and left Wyoming the day after the trial ended. Catherine took what remained of the family money and opened a school for children whose parents couldn't afford education. The town changed, slowly at first, then faster. People who'd been silent found their voices. Businesses that had been bullied started thriving. And the railroad, when they came through 6 months later to negotiate right-of-way, found themselves dealing with a united coalition of landowners who drove a hard bargain and got fair compensation for everyone. Isabel and Jesse rebuilt their barn, bigger and stronger than before. They used some of Isabel's remaining money to help the Hendersons rebuild their well and to buy stock that helped the Chens expand their business. Not charity, but investment in their community. And every night, Jesse came home to a wife who challenged him, stood with him, and loved him with a fierceness that still took his breath away. Isabel would watch him walk through the door and feel that same flutter in her chest she'd felt the first day she arrived. Only now, it wasn't fear or uncertainty. It was home. One evening, almost a year after Isabel had stepped off that stagecoach, they sat on their rebuilt porch watching the sunset. Isabel's hand rested on her belly, where their first child was just beginning to show. "You scared?" Jesse asked, covering her hand with his. "Terrified. You?" "Same." He kissed her temple. "But we'll figure it out. Same way we figured out everything else." "Together," Isabel said. "Together," Jesse agreed. "Jesse?" Isabel turned to face him. "Do you remember what you said the first day I arrived? About being the kind of man who knows what honesty is worth?" "I remember." "You were right. Honesty is worth everything." "Because if I hadn't written that letter telling you I was plain and simple, if I hadn't told you the truth about who I was, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have this. And if I hadn't answered it, if I hadn't been desperate enough to risk everything on a stranger's honest words, I'd still be alone." Jesse pulled her close. "You saved me, Isabel, in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," Isabel corrected. "That's how this works. That's how it's always worked." Thomas rode up, looking amused. "You two going to sit here being sappy all night? Or are you coming to the community meeting? They're voting on the school board positions." "The meeting," Isabel said, standing and pulling Jesse up with her. "Because that's what we do now. We show up. We participate. We build something that lasts." As they walked toward town, hand in hand, partners in every sense, Isabel thought about the woman who'd written that desperate letter a year ago. The woman who'd believed she was plain and simple, who'd thought she had nothing to offer. That woman had been wrong about almost everything. Not about being plain. Isabel still saw an ordinary face when she looked in the mirror. But she'd been wrong about having nothing to offer. She'd had courage, honesty, and a strength she hadn't known existed. She'd had the ability to stand beside a man who needed someone to stand with him, to build a life worth fighting for, and to prove that love didn't need beauty or perfection to be real. All it needed was truth, partnership, and two people brave enough to choose each other every single day. "What are you thinking about?" Jesse asked, squeezing her hand. "I'm thinking that I used to believe I was simple, plain, nothing special." Isabel smiled up at him. "But you taught me something, Jesse Blackwell." "What's that?" "That simple doesn't mean ordinary. That plain doesn't mean invisible.
And that sometimes the most extraordinary love comes from two people who just decide to be honest about who they are and brave enough to build something real together." Jesse stopped walking, pulled her close, and kissed her right there in the middle of the road, with the whole town watching. When they finally broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you, Isabel Blackwell, for exactly who you are, for everything you've given me, for the life we've built and the future we're going to have." "I love you too," Isabel whispered, "more than I ever thought possible." They walked on toward the meeting, toward their community, toward the life they'd fought for and won together, knowing that whatever challenges came next, they would face them the same way they'd faced everything else, with honesty, courage, and an unshakable partnership that had transformed them both from two broken people into something far stronger than either could have been alone.